Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Responsible Edge podcast with me, Charlie Martin. As a reminder, the Responsible Edge is a show about marketing practice that not only achieve results, but do so with integrity. So today, I was delighted to be joined by Sarah O'Shell. Sarah is the principal consultant and founder of Animate Collective. She is a technology, communications, and circular economy strategist focused on investment, curiosity, and stewardship to shape future realities. She is an absolutely brilliant woman with an amazing career already to date at a very young age. And she has some really, really interesting ideas around the role or the impact of looking at nature's ecosystems and nature systems and the application of those systems within a commercial context. And in particular, how we as marketeers can learn from and adopt some of those ecological principles, if you like, into the way that we do things in order to maximize our growth potential. So we had a fascinating conversation all around those particular themes. And then I have to say, Sarah brought a very unique and a very interesting piece of advice to the table that was particularly interesting too for any junior marketers out there. So just wanted to say a big thank you to Sarah for taking the time to get up early over there in Seattle, Washington, to meet with us on today's show. I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. Obviously, if you've got any comments and thoughts or would like to reach out to Sarah directly, you'll find links to everything included within our bios, and we would love to receive any comments or thoughts as suggested. So hope you enjoyed today's show, and thanks again for following and engaging with the Responsible Edge. Sarah, first of all, thank you so much for giving up some of your time. I know early morning time over there in Seattle, Washington. It's like 7:30 in the morning, isn't it for you?
Yes,
thank you so much for joining.
I had coffee, so we're good to go.
You've had coffee, classic, and you've had breakfast. That's impressive. Get breakfast and a coffee in before podcast in the morning. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent. So Sarah, as we've kind of spoken about before starting the show today, just wanted to kind of kick things off. Be great to get sort of a bit more of a history on you and your background and some of the fascinating kind of work that you've been involved with so quickly and so early on in this kind of early stage of your career. Can you maybe just give our listeners a flavor of you?
Oh, thank you. So I have always been into nature. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, which is where Greenpeace was founded. So just being surrounded in the community, and my family had farms growing up, so orchard as well as a family farm. And I grew up around regenerative systems and really saw the impact that nature has on businesses. And going into my university years, I was starting in high school really excited about business. My first startup was a solar window. So again, into the sustainability space early on. I caught the entrepreneurship bug and continued to work with startups throughout my career. And I started my career as an industrial designer, so physical product design. If you go to Starbucks, there's still some things that I design that are sold there. And that got me to see factories abroad. And I noticed that there were some critical issues for environmental and social responsibility. And I felt that being a designer, I didn't necessarily have the voice at the table that I needed in order to push for some change. And so I pivoted my career back into working with startups and went into marketing. It was a bit easier to get into startups being in marketing. And I also found that coming from my technical background as an industrial designer, I was able to understand the engineering side of things, the material side of things, how machines work. And I was able to communicate with the deep tech startups, as well as help them better communicate in layman terms with the world. So since then, I have moved to work at GE Digital, and I helped them advise on a sustainability software product and lead digital marketing there. And a couple months ago, I left, and I'm now an independent consultant for startups in the circular economy industrial space, helping them grow their businesses. So really just tried to pursue the thread of sustainability all the way.
Sarah, that was a fantastic. I mean, there are nutshell kind of introductions to one's background and careers, and then there are nutshell introductions, and that was absolutely fantastic. You rattled us through such a varied and brilliant kind of career that you've had so far in such a short amount of time. I'm gonna start picking some things out though, if it's okay.
Go for it.
So I want to go back to, you know, growing up in the Northwest and understanding. I thought it was fascinating. You mentioned that Greenpeace were sort of established where you were from. Talk me through though, like what was that experience of? You mentioned regenerative systems and you were around those regenerative systems, but what did like being in nature and ultimately growing a love and a care for kind of nature around you, what did that mean to you? Like what it's obviously had a big influence then upon the things that you've then gone on to do. Like, describe to us kind of some of those formative moments when you kind of really, you know, gained that appreciation for nature around you.
Yeah, you know, growing up on farms, you learn about the circle of life. But I think Washington State has a really excellent education system that incorporates nature, as well as education about indigenous populations.
Mm-hmm.
So we raised salmon in elementary school and got to learn about the impact of declining salmon populations and forestry, and how that has led to nutrient deprivation, reduced nutrients in the ecosystems, and that is deplenishing the salmon population, how indigenous populations would live with the land. And there's actually a book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which is a great book, storytelling about, you know, if you're foraging, you know, this was a practice, don't take it all, only take maybe 20% of what nature gives you, so that nature can survive. And we as humans tend to, in the forestry industry in particular around here, you know, I grew up seeing like whole mountainsides being deforested. And I've learned over time, there's now the concept of regenerative forestry, where you try to preserve the soil life, which is the fungi in the soil. And the fungi actually help support all the trees and plants, carrying nutrients between different species. And so for the forest ecosystem and the animals, salmon, et cetera, it's all a collaborative life cycle that sustains our planet. And we need to work more in alignment with that in order to survive as humans on this planet.
And again, that's so brilliantly like extrapolated from your formative experience. Do you remember like always from a young age, like being both aware of and passionate about these issues, if you like, that you saw around you? Was it just a very natural thing that you were aware of, you were around it, and it kind of impassioned you and emboldened you to think, I want to do something in this space?
Yeah, I also grew up in Girl Scouts. In Girl Scouts,
cool.
You know, took kids to the forest and nature. We had to earn badges learning about cool things.
Oh, I remember how many I've got, Sarah. We've got to get into how many badges did you get at Girl Scouts?
Oh, I sewed my vest. So, you know, that's a badge.
That's incredible. I think I got one badge. I think I got my putting up the tent properly badge. So you clearly, you clearly outdid me. That's very impressive. Very impressive. So sorry. So you were in Girl Scouts which obviously was an opportunity to be exposed to all things.
Yeah, from like 5 years old. So
fantastic. And then I'm jumping forward a little bit here, but talking a little bit about your experience in industrial design, how did that, in terms of why was that the kind of next step for you in terms of, you know, I know going into university and further education, like what was it that drew you to industrial design?
So in high school, I was also a community service organizer, fundraising organizer. I was president of our business club, really, really into activism. And I really believed that business could change the world. But I was also really excited about art. And industrial design seemed to be an interdisciplinary field where you have to understand behavioral science, what moves people. You need to understand design and like aesthetics, human factors, user experience. Business is really strong because you're kind of a liaison between the engineering team and executives. And where I went to school, Western Washington University, they do have a interdisciplinary program where you get to participate with other departments at the university and get involved in research. And that was how I got involved in the solar window project. They also have a really strong sustainability undercurrent where you learn about life cycle assessment. So I learned a life cycle assessment from what used to be a giant phone book.
Oh, wow.
It's not a phone book, but it's like a line item estimates for like every single thing you could do in your supply chain.
Wow.
Emissions estimates, yeah. And we did a project called Remade, which is pretty cool, and it's reflective of where the circular economy is going these days, where you find materials that can continue to be used. They still have value, so you capture them and then you turn them into a product. And then we actually got to sell that at a retail store, and I made a flower press.
Fantastic. And sorry, is that initiative still going on at the university? Do you know? Is that something?
Yes, they're actually doing it right now, and I'm going to go speak about the circular economy in a few weeks. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that. The alumni, the alumni coming back to inspire the next generation of remakers. That's super cool. Okay, and then I will. I know you did try and get away with not having a proper dissection of your fascinating career and the things that you've done so far. So that's why I'm peering into this, Sarah. Talk to me about, you kind of brushed over slightly that moment of realizing that industrial design essentially wasn't going to enable you to have the kind of impact that you wanted to have, especially in terms of the areas related to sustainability and the impacts that you wanted to achieve with that. So just can you talk us through a little bit more like the detail of what that experience was, what those kind of key moments were, and what your conclusions were, identifying marketing as being the next step?
Yeah. So I really felt that I was drawn to design because I really felt that design is such a powerful role. You get to be the decision maker for pretty much the whole product. However, in the real world, it doesn't really work that way. So typically, your clients would have ideas about what they want, and they come to you, and you kind of need to satisfy their needs as much as you might think something else might be a better solution. That's where the business case comes in, and that's why I got a bit more excited about going towards the business side of things in marketing and having a voice at the table for those early strategy decisions for where the business is going. And I wanted to be the marketer that was responsible and respectful of the design process. And I love working with designers these days, and I like to think designers like working with me. So
I was going to say, I imagine they absolutely love working with you because of that degree of compassion and empathy and understanding that you can bring to the experience for them in terms of what the way that you then work with them.
Yeah. And I also saw that being a designer, you're not necessarily, I don't want to say respected as much, but when it comes to making supply chain decisions, you're not part of that decision process. And so in marketing isn't even really, but I tend to be someone who, like, if I see a problem, I try to, we're getting into internal activism, and I try to voice it, but sometimes you need to leave if you're not able to. I believe in trying to solve the problems where you are, but sometimes you need to leave if you can't.
You mentioned there, it's really interesting. You mentioned there about essentially, the experience of the designer and the lack of being heard, if you like, when it comes to kind of corporate decision making. In terms of like reflecting on your experience and the career in your career as a whole, has that been kind of a common theme, and has that been something that becoming a marketeer or pivoting towards marketing has you've seen a significant difference in terms of the degree to which your voice and your observations and your feedback, etc., is factored into decision making?
Yes, definitely. I think being in marketing, you have access to business sales data, and you also have access to higher level executives, and you're also one of the departments that showcases performance data. And so when the business has initiatives, for example, sustainability initiatives, I've really worked hard in my career to build data models for marketing, from the ground up, everything that we do. And a specific tag for if it's something related to sustainability, make sure that's known by executives, that sustainability is having this impact on sales. And I've actually found that rigorous tracking, of course, helped by data scientists, customers will go and check on the sustainability aspects of your company in the process of their buying cycle, even if that's not necessarily the main reason why they're buying. It's kind of like a checkbox in the buying process. So throughout my career, that's just the data has been something that I've realized is a motivator, that it's driving sales. And being in marketing, you can have a voice to executives for that. When it comes to changing the supply chain, I think that's a much harder process. We live in a world where supply chains are still pretty opaque, although in the sustainability space, we're getting a lot more solutions and regulation that is pushing companies to make their supply chains visible and require reporting from them. And reporting doesn't necessarily mean the action is being taken. So there's also, surprise audits that you should do in your supply chain.
Yeah, fascinating. So I guess the crux, if you like, of how to, as a marketeer, be better heard is to utilize the data available to you to put forward a clear and concise and objectifiable case, if you like, for your stated opinion.
Yeah, and I wouldn't. Emotion is wonderful. I love my personal motivation for it, and I love when other people are personally motivated to pursue social and environmental and governance initiatives. That can be a great start. However, for a company to focus and actually take action that is relatable to the business itself, not just the workforce, the business executives as a cohort, they're going to require a clear case. And that is how you make your case, is you say, okay, what is the opportunity cost of not doing this? What are the risks that are impacting our business? For example, that's water if you're a food and beverage company. That could be wildfires if you're located in California. And these are real factors. It could be social unrest that's causing part of your supply chain to not function anymore. And these are real things that are happening in the world that the business should be taking action on. It's just common sense.
Is there an opportunity, though, as a marketeer? I guess I always view us as marketeers as having kind of within our toolkit, we have the data, the objectifiable data, but we also have the capacity to, alongside that data, provide some impassioned messaging that can really connect with us individually, if you like, within the C-level executive suite, with people on a human level. And you still have that opportunity within marketing and creative to try and sort of come at it with a pincer effect, if you like, the emotion and the data kind of combined. Is that a fair synopsis?
Yeah, I think the emotion side of things is really great for storytelling. However, in the sustainability space, we need to be science-backed. And in the business space, we need to be data-backed. So always make sure you are validating claims. That's becoming more and more regulated. But creating the story around it, that's what moves groups of people. And I also think marketing is in a powerful position to be internal and external network accelerators. And so marketing can work and collaborate with other departments in the business, whether that be legal, sustainability, the IT team for the data, and really create a force within. And externally recognize all of the different stakeholders that you're working with in your business, create data model, this is getting to be a lot of data, but understand how they can partner with your business and move action forward, understand who is influencing your customers, and partner with them.
Yeah, fantastic, Sarah. I love it. Yeah, as I say, we for listeners that don't know, we've had back and forth, Sarah and I, about getting her onto the podcast, and we honestly had so many great ideas for different podcast themes and areas to explore. So the major thing for us is managing to stay on track. So Sarah, let me bring you back to just one question before we look at this week's article. What does, when obviously we pitch for you to come on and join us looking at the Responsible Edge and all things ethical and responsible marketing practice, like for you, why is the ethical nature and the responsible nature with which we approach marketing, why is that important? What are the key things that makes that an important issue?
Yeah, I think so. Marketing is the voice. Marketing creates the brand of a company, and you're the public-facing voice of that company. Marketing can also help create the internal culture of a company. There's whole internal comms teams, and so you are really the influencer to both those parties. And if you are lying, sometimes we don't know we're lying. Sometimes we don't know we've chosen a supplier that is not telling the truth about its products. For example, in the product space, physical product space, we see a lot of recycling claims that aren't valid. I've actually talked about that myself. And you as a marketer may have just picked that from a catalog. And that catalog said it was sustainable. However, that's where I think I am valuable, coming from an industrial design and engineering background, knowing about materials and machines and production processes. I'm able to see through that, but that is where the law is heading. You're going to need to know these things. And so marketing maybe traditionally was more creative, how we speak, but it is now becoming a more technical field, especially with the integration of data.
Yeah, which obviously we've touched upon before. It's fascinating. You mentioned there, do you think you mentioned your technical background and how that allows you to kind of see the wood through the trees when it comes to perhaps some of the claims and the interrogation that you can carry out of the claims made by potential third parties that you're then incorporating into your messaging. Do you therefore, if you're managing a marketing team now, like what are some of the key things that you could do with a team in order to kind of upskill them and get them to the point where they're able to kind of be better informed to make those kind of judgments? Because presumably that would be something that you would encourage marketing departments to look to adopt.
Yeah, one of the first things when I mentor a lot of founders, but I think this is valid for marketing teams as well. Mm-hmm. And I have done this internally. Just draw a map of the system that you are operating in. And that could be your internal system, and that who are the stakeholders that you are currently working with across the company. That's often a good place to start, but then also think about, well, who influences them? That's who you could be working with across the company. And if you have initiatives that you're trying to get move along, maybe you need to start working with new departments that you haven't even worked with before. Mm-hmm. You can also draw a map of your technical ecosystem, and that can help solve a lot of efficiency issues, or help you recognize that, oh, we're doing duplicate work in these different areas, or this is an opportunity. This is where workflows are dropping, and this team is not picking it up, and then also show those maps to these different teams, because mm-hmm. I've even seen something that I thought was happening, or something that, the IT team thought was happening, is not actually the process that's happening. And because we work in silos so often, we don't know that we're not collaborating so well. And then you can do this mapping process for your business externally as well. Take me back to the question.
No, I love this. It's such gold, Sarah. No, we were talking about, I was picking up on your comment, which I thought was fascinating, suggesting that one of the things that you're able to do when, for example, you see a particular claim that's made by, let's say in this instance, a an organization in your supply chain. And because of your technical background, you're able to sort of see the wood through the trees and be able to sort of interrogate that claim and understand it. And I was just querying with you, like, how do you, because that's, you mentioned it's a more technical job now, being a marketeer. It needs to be a more forensic job. Like, what are the things that businesses or organizations can do in order to assist marketeers in becoming more like you, in essence?
Yeah. Okay. Back to that.
How do we create more sales?
Thinking. Secondly, there's legal language. I would say work with your legal team in marketing to and products team to come up with claims that you can all stand behind. And legal and product may make them longer than marketing would like those claims to be. And so it's going to be a back and forth process. Advertising needs to be bold and punchy and memorable. And you're going to want to use creative wording. And sometimes that might, like earth friendly doesn't necessarily mean anything, but it is a safe term. So we're trying to get more honest in our marketing when it comes to like sustainability claims. And so, yeah, I would just say have a back and forth process and kind of like a cheat sheet of all the best bold statements that are also competitive in the market. So you're going to want to do a competitive analysis where maybe you bring different stakeholders together, the product, legal, sustainability team. Everyone has an opportunity to use Post-it notes and throw ideas up on the maybe a Miro board if you're virtual, and then sort those by most competitively compelling as well as like most impactful from a sustainability sense.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic, Sarah. We're going to end up with we need to find a stationary sponsor that we can work with as we depict Post-it notes and
don't use paper.
Sorry.
Don't use paper. Don't kill the trees.
Oh, of course. Miro. No, of course. No, yeah. Fascinating. I think one thing that I kind of observed from what you were saying there, and again, I know slightly moving outside the technical sort of way in which you described that in terms of strategizing, but it's almost like we want marketeers to become more curious, I guess, and to become more investigatory, if you like, when it comes to, well, I've been shown this and in many instances would just take the following as face value as being something that I can then confidently share and incorporate into my campaigns, etc. However, it's almost the responsibility of the marketeer you are the final bastion, if you like, of ensuring that what's shared is as truthful and as honest and as substantiated as possible. So if you've got any sort of momentary element of doubt over what it is that you're being served, that's the moment where your responsibility is to inquire and to query exactly what's in front of you. Is that a fair? I know it's I know I'm talking about in an ideal world, but that's a real call to action for marketers out there.
Yeah, and I've learned from working in different industries that there's a lot of parallels across industries. And even if you don't know the word or the name for something, that's just because every single industry has been siloed and created its own language for things. Every material has something that's called a material safety data sheet. This is an information sheet about that material that will give you, like, if there's carcinogens, for example, in the medical space, in the United States, we've approved medical products that go into your body that have known carcinogens. And I've refused products because of that. I don't know why there's not better solutions, but anyway, the products have something called a product data sheet. So if you're not sure about the recycling claims of a product, you can always ask a company for that. And anything that you're dealing with should essentially have a PDF data sheet about it.
And therefore be verifiable in terms of the claims that have been made about it. Fascinating. Okay. Sarah, as I thought I was gonna struggle to fit us into 45 minutes because it was always going to be a really interesting conversation. Let me move us on then. really keen for you to kind of maybe just briefly provide a bit of a summary of the Harvard Business School article that we obviously shared. Well, you shared with us, initially.
Yes.
It'd be great to kind of get a flavor of that.
All right. So whenever I go to the airport, I buy a magazine for the plane. It's just a personal gift to myself. And this last month, I got the Harvard Business Review March, April issue. And there were some really fascinating articles about sustainable growth. And the one we chose was Why Consistent Growth is So Challenging. And this article found that the highest performing organizations invest in a growth system that is both short and long term in terms of the capabilities and assets that the company is hoping to develop. And by short term, I mean like there's a 1-year plan. And then by long term, I mean there's a 3 to 5 year plan. And there's a timeline with deliverables along the way. They studied organizations from 2018 to 2022, and they found that the growth champions created a system within their business internally as well as externally that moved the business forward. This is counter to most organizations which operate with a more extractive mindset. And you can compare that to, the linear supply chains that we've had and versus the circular economy where we're creating a product and material system so that we can have flow rather than end of life of products. So what this looks like in companies is they're searching for acquisitions all the time. They have high stakes pressure on getting new customers. They have a reliance marketing. If your marketing team is pushing a lot of discounts and promotions, you might be in a company that is reliant on this. Duplicative innovation and scattered initiatives. So what this can lead to with customers is a high rate of churn. Mm-hmm. And that means that you just have to work harder on getting new customers and you're exhausting them and you're not delivering for them in the long term.
Would you, again, that was brilliantly summarized, Sarah. You've nailed that. Let me ask you, when I read the article, it was, and again, I'm oversimplifying things probably in my mind, but there was almost a sense like those companies that don't integrate a growth system approach, there's almost just desperation in many ways at the heart of a lot of the decision making, and that the growth champions that you've alluded to, there's clear long-term strategic thinking that's gone in, that's essentially enabled them to not have to be, desperate essentially in any of the ways in which they operate. Did that term resonate with you when you read the article?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what I was talking about with systems thinking and systems mapping. So if you can bring multiple teams in your how to get started and shifting your company, bring multiple teams together, have executive representatives as well as lower level representatives, because again, what I mentioned about one team might think something is happening, but that's not actually how it's happening. So you can't design a functional system if you don't have all of the participants in that system at the table. And that goes for designing a product. I also think you should design your business like a product. And so when you do that systems mapping, you can start to understand, well, what is motivating your customers to buy? And it might be several different things, but what is the most compelling outcome that they're looking for? They could be looking for efficiency if there's friction in the system that you've drawn, or they could be looking for total transformation if there's just a ton of, our supply chains tend to be very long and thin. And so if there's some breakdown of different third parties, then your whole supply chain collapses. So maybe that's an opportunity for a transformative platform.
And Sarah, let's brilliant. Let me sort of switch focus slightly and ask you for. I know that you shared with us previously, you've got this really interesting view of how kind of regenerative or sort of ecological systems and concepts can be applied within the business and perhaps within the marketing context. Take it. You mentioned at the beginning of our call, you talked about regenerative farming and some of the formative experiences that you had relating to that. Can you just explain to us a little bit, and again, in as layman's terms as possible, the relationship that you can see between kind of regenerative and circular mapping, and how essentially that all fits together?
Yeah. So this goes back to, I think I mentioned fungus and soil health in the forest, and learning about the salmon growing up, and how they're kind of a keystone species in our ecosystem. So in regenerative farming, you try to essentially create an ecosystem on your farm, and you use tactics like companion planting, where certain plants are literally companions. They're friends with each other. They help prevent bad pests. Certain plants extract nutrients like nitrogen from deep in the soil, and they help bring it to the surface of the soil. So plants with root systems that maybe aren't as deep can get appropriate nutrients. And this even happens in the forest with trees. So regenerative forestry, making sure all of the trees, we don't take away keystone species in the forest if we are harvesting, and we maintain the big trees as well as some of the smaller trees so that they can have a thriving ecosystem, and as well as the undergrowth. Don't replace that with invasive plants or non-native plants. Anyway.
Let me ask you one more question on that. I swear I've seen a Netflix documentary recently that talked about how trees themselves through their roots are literally communicating with each other. Is that have I got that completely wrong?
So yeah, I think that's the Fantastic Fungi documentary, or if you go throwback to Avatar.
Yeah, let's go to
this
Avatar.
Is not a documentary, but the tree, I think the Tree of Souls, it has the glowing roots and it's communicating with all the other plant life on the planet. That is based on actual science from the 90s that is only kind of 25 years later starting to be recognized now. And that science has influenced in math what's called graph theory. And graph theory is about networks. And this network modeling can actually model how disease spread, how culture spreads, like memes, and it can also model human relationships. And that's why, learning about nature and then leading into graph theory, I was like, whoa, this is all related to business and how we can grow resilient business ecosystems.
Fantastic. And so diving into that, when you read, thinking about that regenerative ecosystem and then considering the article and obviously looking at these long-term growth systems as being the kind of the crux of successful companies, can you just talk about the alignment between those regenerative systems and how they can be adopted or utilized as effective growth systems within a business?
So there's a concept of buying groups, and the marketing and sales world is starting to recognize the need to approach marketing and sales, recognizing that reality. We don't operate as much as we may have like an individualist, you must be as strong as you can and successful in all areas. Like, we are all reliant on other people. We are all part of communities. And that is the reality of nature on Earth. And every plant, animal, fungus in that ecosystem, water resource, sun resource, it has a purpose. And every person, and Earth can even be a stakeholder on your map, has a purpose in your business ecosystem too. Why are they there? What are they moving? What are they motivated by? What risks are potentially out there for them? And how can you help them thrive so that they can help you thrive?
And out of interest, if you now kind of specifically look into the marketing and the comms function within an organization, can you just, because essentially, I mean, again, I'm oversimplifying things here, Sarah, but is it fair to say that like one of the fundamentals of the application of regenerative modeling within a business context is this whole idea of kind of less operating in silos and more kind of direct integration between all of the different departments in order to develop an understanding and awareness and a cohesion between those departments. I know I've oversimplified that for myself, but with that in mind, like what specific role can marketing and comms play in terms of supporting that kind of ecosystem?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies have outsourced designers. This systems thinking, human behavior mapping, etc. That comes from my design background, and I love bringing that to marketing. I was kind of took on additional responsibility as a lean facilitator in my last job, and I think marketing people can be really great facilitators. Lean is a management framework for change and transformation. And I think marketers being great communicators, friendly networker type people are really great candidates for that. And also maybe cross-training a bit in design skills like systems thinking, because you're going to need to go into environments where with technical engineering people who don't think the same way as you, and you're going to need to make them feel comfortable sharing their honest opinions and honest experience. And, marketers tend to be great hosts as well. So think of, you're not setting up that environment to sell a product, but you're setting up that environment so that people can operate with candor. And really come to the table and collaborate with each other. They're in organizations that are not acting in this way. There may be a lot of animosity between departments or longstanding arguments where you just don't know that. So a department may have a problem with another department, and they haven't voiced that problem before. So when you're getting started, expect it to be fiery and maybe even call that out. Like, we're not here to point fingers at each other, but like let out the feels. And that can be a good opportunity.
We've got the title of our episode, so thank you for that, Sarah.
Let out the feels.
Let out the feels.
Post-it notes are really great for honesty because they're semi-anonymous. So
except when
quiet time.
Yeah. So okay, and in this instance where we've almost gone through that cathartic kind of therapeutic process in essence as an organization where, come on guys, we all know that in order for us to develop maybe that growth champion, system, if you like, then we need to all work more closely and collaboratively together to basically become a smarter business in many senses. So we've now gone through we're going through the kind of turgid, quite uncomfortable stage of voicing kind of embedded residual resentments that we might have with Department X or Y and the way that we operate and the way that we do things. Like, thinking about your experience and the things that you've worked on over time, like once that's done, like what is the next step? Like, how do we go about then embedding and grounding and founding a new direction?
Yeah. So once you've got all the challenges out on the table, then you can look at the reality of the situation and build a real operating model that works for the people that you are in your organization. And it also works for your customers. It works for external stakeholders like government parties that you need to operate with, the media that you need to operate with, communities that you may be impacting with your business. You can connect those to different departments and functions that may be more directly interfacing with each of those stakeholders and literally like create the structure that is best for your business. Rather, don't think about it I don't think of myself as a marketer. I know I have that title, but I am a change agent. I am someone who solves problems. And I think everyone within the business can start thinking that way. Don't put yourself in a box. and create open dialogue and channel, like official channels for that, so that anyone within the business at whatever level can raise a voice and hold leadership accountable to maintaining this integrated operating model. Yeah.
I love it. So, by the way, I'm going to say for any of our listeners out there, like I think we can all agree that we've had like some serious consultative value come from Sarah during the 45 minutes that we've had here. There have been some like fantastic kind of takeaway suggestions, if you like, that I think people should consider. Just thinking about the work that you do with Animate, like just explain to us a little bit about how, I guess, some of the themes of what we've discussed here today, like how that relates to some of the workshop work, etc., that you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you. So I am launch should be live by the time this podcast comes out, but Animate is a business that helps circular economy businesses in the industrial space, and by that I mean materials companies, software companies, hardware companies, next gen businesses, the ones that are going to shape future realities, grow, develop their business model, as well as investors find opportunities in the space. And so I'm starting with growth, and I'm launching a workshop series for startups to really dive into their business model and figure out a path to accelerating growth with sustainability in mind. And the first workshop is starting in June. So I hope that if you fit that description, please join me.
Brilliant plug, Sarah. You've nailed that. And out of interest, just touching on that, will the workshops, presumably they're ready to sort of go? I mean, how much of the themes of what we've discussed today in terms of kind of, I know you're talking about from a startup perspective, and a lot of our conversation has been on around kind of established businesses and how you go about kind of almost like retrofitting or retrospectively integrating some of these concepts. But how does the idea of kind of, you know, a growth system and an integrated kind of regenerative approach to, you know, the business itself, like, can you talk about how that relates to the workshops that you're delivering?
Yeah. So that's actually the first workshop is starting with that. I think you should, that's the first thing I recommend people begin with when you're developing a business. And then by the third workshop, we'll have a quick start plan so that you can start seeing success with your marketing system. And then beyond that, then once we have that plan in place and the data coming in, then we can move into more advanced things like, and those are the rest of the workshops, analyzing that. Once you have customers, how do you then cross-sell them? How do you help them form partnerships and continue thriving in your business ecosystem? How do you continue educating them? And that could even lead to like maximizing your product, upselling them. So creating an ecosystem where both you and your customers can thrive together with your partners, that is a resilient, your business will be more resilient over time and hopefully survive.
I love that. And by the way, I should just say for anyone out there that is currently considering whether or not to check out Animate's workshop series, that obviously fits the bill that you've just described there, Sarah, I would have to say that from having a few meetings and engagements with Sarah up to this point, you would be doing yourself an absolute service if you were to engage with her and to hopefully, you know, get her to sprinkle some of her magic and experience and insights into your business. So yeah, I will plug your plug, Sarah, and say that people out there should definitely look at it. Sarah, I, as expected, we've whistled through 45 minutes or so of our call. I'm just really keen, and again, especially I think hearing about your history and your experience and your formative experience, I'm always keen to give some advice to like younger marketeers out there that are kind of kicking off their careers, and from people that are more experienced and senior like yourself. What's like an absolute golden nugget piece of advice that you would have loved to have heard yourself when you were younger that you think could really help more junior marketeers out there listening?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to reach out to your heroes. I took way too long to start reaching out to my heroes. And when I sent them an email about how excited I was about their work, they totally responded and talked to me. And that just like opened the floodgates to treating people who I was just in awe of as more like friends. And they're going to be excited that you're excited about them. So just feel free to send that thoughtful LinkedIn connection note. and just get started on building your network.
Sarah, we've got to ask just so that we can sort of tantalize with it. But can you give us a name of one of your heroes who you can recall?
Neri Oxman. She was formerly at the MIT Media Lab, and now she runs the Oxman Agency. It's all about it's regenerative growth. So she's developing growth systems literally to grow products into what they need to become. And this is, for example, walls that breathe. So like building facades that they have like living bacteria in them that help the wall pores open and have passive like living HVAC systems in buildings.
Wow. Okay. She's a bit of a rock star then. Wow. Well, it's great that we've plugged her, and perhaps we'll be able to reach out to her too. But Sarah, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today, and for taking us through some really interesting insights. We'll leave it there for now. See if we can invite you back on if you haven't been too horrified by the experience. But thank you for joining us today.
This is awesome. It's a pleasure to get to know you guys, and I appreciate what you're all doing at the Responsible Edge podcast, showcasing incredible initiatives around the world.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah.
All right. See you next time.